Hello, welcome to the Holistic Healer Podcast, a podcast dedicated to all things holistic. I am your host, Cheryl Lee. Today's guest is Elizabeth Andrews. She is a fitness icon, a TRX master trainer, a yoga teacher. She is a cancer warrior and survivor, and she is an absolute advocate of movement and play. We sit down today to discuss Elizabeth's journey of getting a breast cancer diagnosis, keeping the body strong and flexible throughout the process, dealing with the emotional body, and so much more. Enjoy the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Holistic Healer Podcast. I am your host, Cheryl Lee, and today's guest is Elizabeth Andrews, and I'm so excited to have you on the show. She is a master trainer, a TRX master instructor, you're a yoga instructor, you are a cancer warrior and a cancer survivor, and you're an advocate for moving and playing and keeping the body moving. So we're going to delve into all of that stuff and more today. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me, Shirley. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. So I thought it might be, I always like to give people a little reference of your journey and maybe your journey from what got you into the fitness industry, going back as far as you want to go, and what got you to the point of diagnosis. And that can, just take as long as you want, because I want to hear it all.
Okay, I'm just sitting here like, ooh, that's a long story.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's always fun. There are so many yummy moments throughout that to relive. So I started in the fitness industry. Back then, we always called it aerobics. I was an aerobic instructor. And at a time I was in college, I loved dance. I used to do gymnastics. One of the things that I think is important for me to mention also, because the pendulum went completely the other way, but I quit out of most anything that I started when I was younger. And when I took gymnastics, I got to a competitive level, I quit, which is so not me now. When I took ballet, once I did a little bit of got into toe, I quit. So this was a pattern that I followed for most of my teenage and early years. So it's really important to kind of mention that. I always loved dance and wish I'd stayed in it. So in college, aerobics was starting to get huge. This would have been the late 80s. And I thought, you know what? This is an opportunity for me to get into dance again. And I had gained a lot of weight in college. I was really skinny my whole life. And then back then they called it the freshman 10. We only gained 10 pounds. I think now they call it something else. But I did it my junior year where everybody else had lost their weight. And it was a huge struggle for me because I'd always been thin and I ate whatever I wanted and my weight wasn't an issue. And I couldn't get it off. And I started running and I got shin splints. So I became very bulimic for many years trying to manage my weight gain. And so aerobics and teaching aerobics was another strategy to manage my weight. Even in the beginning of my fitness career, I struggled with bulimia because now body image and performance and all that is beginning to play into the picture. So that's how I started. I started teaching in Knoxville, Tennessee, moved to Chattanooga, started teaching at the Sports Barn, which just sold, which is so sad to me because that was so much of my history is at the Sports Barn in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And started doing competitive aerobics. That was really huge in the early 90s. I started teaching step. I always wanted to get into presenting because, again, I'm the baby of the family. I'm that performer. Yeah. But I was always scared I wasn't good enough. But I knew there was a part of me that I had something to offer. So I started presenting just regionally my step classes. Well, then I started having babies. And at this time, Idea World started in the late 80s, which is like the Super Bowl of all fitness conferences. And it was huge. And anybody that presented there was the Madonna of fitness, basically. And that was my dream, to always present at Ideal World. But I, again, started having babies and I didn't pursue that and kept having babies. And now we're moving into the 90s, the latter 90s, but knew I had something to offer and continued to teach and train around. Now we live in Atlanta, Georgia. We moved to Seattle. The boys are a little older. I'm kind of jumping around. I married the guy that I did competitive aerobics with. He was my
Yeah,
partner
okay.
at that time. I've
Cool.
shared that story before. And at this point, I had taken, so this, we moved here in 2005. I had taken my first TRX class and I loved it. And I'm, again, very type A, into all this training. So now the pattern of quitting out of things had, now the pendulum was over here. Like I worked through, if I hurt, I worked through it. I didn't quit. And because of that,
Right.
I kind of ruined many parts of my body and had to have things fixed, like my foot. But I, by damn, didn't quit. So again, went from here to here. Now I'm trying
Yeah.
to live somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. Okay.
So I loved it. TRX, very strong, had my ass handed to me. And I was like, you know what? I want to be a master trainer for them because I believe that I could teach it authentically. I could speak into it because I believe in the education. I believe in the product. And so in secret, I applied to be a master trainer. And back then, it was a hell of a process to become a master trainer. We had to do these physical. The owner of TRX was a Navy SEAL, so the bar was really
Wow.
way up here physically,
Right.
and also in performing as well. But I did it, but I did it in secret. I was invited to come down for a long weekend in San Francisco at the time. That's where headquarters was. And then I was chosen, and that really opened up a lot of doors for me
Yeah, I bet.
as far as educating. And because I began to travel all over the US around TRX, I was invited to be a master trainer at some other companies. I didn't stay with them very long because authentically, I just didn't love them. And then became a presenter nationally for TRX. And then I checked my first box. I presented at Idea World for TRX and have gone on now to present my own content for Idea World, which I do in 4 weeks. So it's kind of, and I write for a global ACE, which is American Council of Exercise, and people get certified through that. And so I've worn a lot of hats and managed clubs and teams, and then most recently was part of Amazon to help build the fitness app Halo, which sadly did not last because I have a lot of reasons of because. But that was a really cool growth opportunity. Very stressful. Sometimes I'm like, did I get cancer because of
that? Well, the stress of that, yeah.
Yeah. So there's I'm kind of making you on a curvy road of where I am now and fitness, but I continue to teach and train and present. I've got 2 conferences this summer and then one in October, which I love teaching. That's my happy place, is really educating. And now my own content. And then come last October, I was actually in the South presenting at one of the conferences. I'm presenting again this year, DCAC. And my best friend in Chattanooga, Lisa, is an oncology nurse for over 30 years. And I felt something in my right breast. I was like, I think I have a lump in my breast. I feel something. And I don't think it's the implant. I have very thin skin. And she's like, well, when you get home, you need to go have that looked at. And then I got home and I'm lying, we're watching TV. And I told Steve, I was like, feel this. I think it's not supposed to be there. And he felt it because he knows my breasts very, very well.
Yeah.
And, and he's like, I think you need to go have that looked at. And so I tried to get a mammogram, after the shutdown. A lot of people didn't do what they were supposed to do. It had been 3 years since I'd had one, and breast cancer runs on my mom's side. I now know I'm not genetically predisposed to breast cancer, but I was always watching it closely because I've already had 2 biopsies in this right breast because I have very dense breast. So I couldn't get in to get a mammogram. This is the crazy thing that's a whole nother conversation about health and prevention.
Yes.
So then they're like, you need to call your doctor and they need to make you an appointment. So I tried to call my GYN, or I did call my GYN, tried to get in. They're like, it'll be 2 weeks or so before you can get into the GYN, which means even further to get the mammogram. So I also see a naturopath, Wendy Ellis, who is amazing, specializes in women's health. got into her like in a couple of days. I'm telling her about it. She's like, can I feel it? And she's feeling it. I'm watching her face. She's like, yeah, I'll write you an order. So I got into a mammogram a couple of days after that.
Yeah.
And then a week later, she called me and said, yeah, it's cancer. And I caught it super early. It was invasive ductile. It's the most common. It's hormone receptive positive, which was very sad to me because I loved my hormones and I started taking hormones in my early 50s to prevent some of the symptoms that when you stop taking hormones or when you have cancer diagnosis, most women, breast cancer, they put you on hormone blockers and the side effects are absolutely brutal. So now I can't take hormones because of this. And then trying to get into a breast surgeon. It was at Christmas that took over 4 weeks. Yeah, it was.
So, wow. So were you on like bioidentical hormones then?
I didn't do
You didn't? Okay.
Identical because I thought, again, being very holistic, which started in my journey in Atlanta, like very extreme. I'm a little more balanced now, but I couldn't find when I first moved here, I couldn't find a compound pharmacy or someone to prescribe them back then in the middle of 2005. Or 2005, I was interested in them, but when I needed them, my doctor wasn't doing compounding. That's what it was. So early 50s. So, and I didn't know Wendy Ellis at that time. So I was prescribed a combi patch at that time, which was a combination of estrogen, progesterone. Then when I started seeing Wendy a few years ago, she was like, you need progesterone separately. And so I started taking that and I loved it. Like my joints quit hurting. I wasn't as crazy in my head. Like, you know, I still maintained great muscle mass. Like I loved my hormones.
Yeah.
And then my breast cancer was fed by hormones. So anyway.
Wow. Okay. So just kind of backtracking a little bit. So when in your career did the implants happen? When did those come into your body?
Okay. So back when I was competing, and so this would have been the early 90s, and I lived in the South. You know, we kind of mentioned like different parts of the country really embrace those implants. Like a friend of mine when I lived in Atlanta, and I had huge implants. I got them in 94, which I had gotten super muscular. I'd lost a lot of my breast tissue. I was competing, so I popped in some implants. The doctor who was doing them in Chattanooga was known for boobs, Dr. Kraft. And I was young. I think I was 30. And all I knew is that or 29, I wanted to go in and I didn't want to come out looking like Carla McCamey because her boobs were as big as my head. Yeah, and that's all I knew. You know, back then we didn't have YouTube or I did zero research except that. I don't want, and I just wanted to be that big. And the only other information we had then is like silicone. You don't want silicone because again, early 90s. So I did saline, which are like big jugs. Anywho, I came out not looking like Carla McCamey, but like her sister, very slightly smaller. They were huge. And 3 months later, I got pregnant.
Oh my goodness, Elizabeth.
My husband loved those implants. I didn't even really get to enjoy them. So that was 94.
So did they have to come out at that point when you found out you were pregnant?
No.
Oh, okay.
And the side story of that I got pregnant, that pregnancy, that's the son that I had that died. So my milk still came in. I didn't breastfeed. I wasn't going to breastfeed anyway, though. I'm not a big one. But it all worked. So having the implants, I was under the muscle again because that's what they did. I relied completely on the plastic surgeon. I had those implants. We moved to Atlanta in 95, 96. In 1999, I'm teaching a heavy bag class, and I'm very fast twitch also, so I have very strong, powerful muscles, and they are under the muscle. Again, I've learned so much about that as well. I taught this heavy bag class, and I'm holding mitts, and people are punching with mitts while I'm teaching the class. I get home, and I look down, and I told Steve, I was like, oh my gosh, something's wrong with my implant. He's like, huh. Well, let's watch and see what it looks like later this evening. Anyway, I popped that implant. So I had to go back in, which was kind of a blessing because I'd had all my boys at this point. They were saline, super heavy. So a plastic surgeon in Atlanta, they were able to be redone free because they were still under warranty.
Under warranty. The boobs are under warranty and get them
No,
in.
it's like, I had no idea.
I know.
So at this point, I put silicone in because now they've, redone them. There's a lot of data around silicone's fine. Still under the muscle. So that would have been 2000, 2001. And so this breast cancer journey, because they require, or one of my surgeons, not the other group, asked for an MRI to check the breast cancer. And that's how I found the implants had ruptured. When they ruptured, I have no idea, but they were so nasty that, so at least 20 years in there, when Dr. Johnson pulled out my implants, when they were doing the double mastectomy, they were dripping on the floor.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, when you talked about your journey on your Instagram, and I heard that because we share, we're like really opposite. I was a step instructor. I competed in fitness and figure competitions. I had babies. I was teaching aerobics. I was doing like 3 classes a day at Spa Lady in Vancouver at the time. And it's like, I just thought, okay, I nursed all 3 of my kids and my boobs were like on the floor basically. And so I was like, I have to get them. And it wasn't even a choice for me to think about saline because it was being pushed like, well, it's not really silicone. They were saying it's a cohesive gel. It's like a gummy bear. And if they do rupture, it's not a problem because, they're just going to stay in place. I mean, that was what was told at the time. Right.
Yeah.
And, for me, I ended up going on working in plastic surgery for a surgeon for a while. And the amount of women that were coming in there with ruptured gel implants and the mess, I was like, oh my goodness. Yeah. So do you remember at the time when you got your first implants put in, the saline ones, do you remember what your mindset was around that time? Like where you were at emotionally and mentally? Like what was the kind of the push, if you can remember, of why you wanted them?
I was in a point of my life. So again, I've already mentioned the body image thing, which was really huge for me. Yeah. I'd gotten very muscular from doing competitions. I was going through a divorce. I was having an affair with my now husband. Yeah. And the scene in Chattanooga, Tennessee at the sports bar at that time was literally like a bar. If you taught steps, back in that day, I would have 50, 60 people in my class. It was like going to a club and we were wearing thongs and we were wearing, you remember? And we were wearing
flossing. All of it.
and my tights were literally cut to my butt cheek. Like it was the cheesiest.
Oh my goodness.
So we were really celebrating our bodies and the way they looked. And it was really important. And Steve is 7 years younger than me. So at that time he was 21. Yeah. Which is younger than my youngest son. And so all of this mattered. So I get very vain. My body mattered and I'd lost a lot of breast tissue and everyone seemed to be noticing these big fake boobs. And I thought, I was getting a divorce. I got some payout and I was like, I'm going to buy me some big fake boobs because I want to look like that.
Right.
And again, young, would I do it again? I don't know if I would do it again. I was such a different person at that time, but I will say I've loved them. I have enjoyed them. Yes. Especially going through this journey when they had to come out and looking at reconstruction, you have those women. And again, we're all very unique and different. Yep. Mm-hmm. But the women are like, I just pull them out. I go flat. And it's like, okay, but I loved my titties. Yeah. Like I love, and my husband loved my boobs and I loved, like it made a statement whenever I walked in a room.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also too, especially getting them at like a young, younger and I was the exact same as you, same thing. It was like, I just wanted to like, look good. And when you have them in for that amount of time and you're in the fitness industry, it becomes part of you. It's how you define yourself. It's like, this is my look. This is kind of like, I'm known as the girl, the little petite girl with the big boobs and the butt or whatever. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so it's like, it forms our identity and thinking about not having them. It's like, I don't even know who that person would be. Like, how would I actually move through the world without boobs?
And it's,
right?
you
And
know,
it's
and people
scary.
that don't understand it don't
Yeah,
understand it. It's
right.
like, it's the same thing. Like I've learned people that have been diagnosed with cancer, people that haven't, they don't get all the many layers. And like Steve, we laugh because I have to have humor through all
Of
this,
course.
but
Yeah, so
he
important.
would say, before this was, pre mastectomy and then after mastectomy, he said, you'd walk into a room and it was like, pow, pow. He said, and
Yeah,
now you walk in,
fireworks.
well, you walk into a room, it's like ping, ping, when I had my little, little
Oh my
expanders.
goodness.
And that's true. Like, and so that feeds those parts of our humanity that's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I am a force to be reckoned with,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
so it's like my business card, every this building this and the way that I moved in life, like you
Yeah.
said, was I was known for that. Side note, this is kind of sweet. So I had all boys. Do you know all of my sons? I think my older knew later. They did not know they were fake boobs. Can you imagine like how my husband's still like,
Well,
how,
how did that
how?
happen? Yeah.
Like
I
you're
think, yeah. So funny. They're like, well, that's what mom looks like. I
yeah.
mean, and if we don't share it with them, then how, yeah, of course, they're going to just
Well,
think mom's
but
like that.
most people know, like we know, I can always tell implants, when you're
Yeah,
lean
totally.
and then you have big fake, but you're like, it's a
Yeah.
look. But my youngest son, who's now 20, 23, he's like, I just thought you had good genes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so funny. That is so funny. That's so similar too. Cause I have one girl and two boys, but my 21-year-old now at the time, I think he finally figured it out in his teenage years. Right. And, but it was the same thing. He had no idea. And I just was like, I didn't even think about, I'm just like, yeah, definitely, so funny
How can
though.
you not tell?
How can you not tell? Like, where are you?
Yeah.
But when you got when the saline implant ruptured and you went with the gel, did you go with the same size or did you downsize a little bit or?
Again, like I so did not do my due diligence. I
Yeah.
left it up to the surgeon.
Yeah.
So my very first set of implants, I don't even know. Now I've learned like there's profile and there's volume and then
Yes.
there's CCs. Back then we just talked about CCs and I don't remember what the CCs were other than they played out. I think they were like triple Ds because
Triple
they were
D's.
very wide. They were under
Yeah.
my arm and so the surgeon in Atlanta tried to fix my pocket because the pocket had gotten really big and they moved under my arms, like I said. So I don't know if they were the same CCs or a little smaller because gel presents itself a little differently,
Yeah.
in our
Right.
body. And they
Yeah.
were not as heavy as the
Yeah.
saline. So, but
Yeah.
they looked as big, I
Yeah, and that's what I
guess.
was going to say too. With these gel implants, like I'm like you, I have had mine for so long that I don't even, they're just part of
Hmm.
me. Like I don't ever think they're not heavy. They're
Hmm.
just like, they're
Yeah.
soft. They're, which is a difference between the gel and the saline. And so I don't even think about it, which can
Hmm.
sometimes be, that's the scary part is you have these in and I know that kind of the advice is that after 10 years with a gel implant, they should be replaced. And you had yours in for how many years total?
That would have been my second pair, Shirley, it had to be 2000, 2001 until now.
Right.
So however long that second pair was in, I wouldn't have known they were ruptured. Nothing presented differently
And
in my body.
you were getting mammograms too throughout
Yeah.
that time. Yeah.
And what I learned is it takes an MRI
And
to
that
find out
is
if they've
the
ruptured.
scary part.
Well, what you gonna
Yeah.
pay out of pocket? So are
Yeah.
women going to be motivated? I need to go do a breast implant check with the MRI and pay out of pocket. I don't think insurance is going to pay that. Again, it's one of those situations like, what the hell are we supposed to do? Yeah, we need to replace them are you just going to go in 10 years, assume that they need to replace if they don't?
Yeah.
It's a quandary.
It's a quandary for sure. Do you feel that had you not had those implants rupture, do you think that you still would have had a cancer diagnosis, or do you think that the rupture and that gel within the body was a definite catalyst for your diagnosis?
I have no idea. And I've had
Yeah.
other people ask me that. They're like, do you think the hormones caused your breast? Like, because I'm so healthy. And that's what most people is
Right.
like, you are already doing all the preventative,
Mhm.
lifestyle things
Yeah,
to
yeah.
prevent cancer. But as my husband says, he's like, maybe if you weren't doing all that, it would have been diagnosed 10 years ago, like even when you
Yeah.
were younger, and it bought you more time. So I don't know. Again, I had no idea they ruptured. Like, I didn't feel anything in my body. I didn't have any symptoms
Oh,
outside of
yeah.
what I would have known. What I do know throughout the cancer thing is I was meeting with Fred Hutch, which is supposed to be the
Uh-huh.
cancer people, right? And I also was meeting with Dr. Marion Johnson here at Evergreen. And when you, again, are diagnosed with cancer, people push Fred Hutch. Well, I'd known personally, sadly, a couple people that had seen Marion Johnson and sang her praises. Fred
Right.
Hutch did not order the MRI with my cancer diagnosis. Marion did. And had I stayed with Hutch, I probably would have been, because the lump was so tiny and it was so early, and both were saying, you know what, you're so active, you could probably just do a lumpectomy, get radiation, move on with your life.
Got
So
you.
had I stayed with Hutch, that's the route I probably and was thinking to go. Whereas Dr. Johnson did say, let's do an MRI just to make sure it hasn't spread. And that's how the
Wow.
rupture was found. And at that point, if I have to replace my implants, I'm going to get a double mastectomy and clean house up top, because I have to have, implants anyway.
Right.
And when I went to see my plastic surgeon, Dr. Min, he pulled out when I was trying to, gathering all the information at the very beginning. He pulled out he's like, this is all the breast tissue you have. Like, and it wasn't that much. He's like, all of this
Yeah.
is implant.
Right.
He was
All it's
like,
implant.
so yeah. And he's like, lumpectomy is breast sparing. You don't have a lot of breasts. It's all implant. And then, what a lot of women don't know, you could do lumpectomy radiation. It changes your tissue
Yeah.
forever, and it's not forgiving, but we
Yes.
think it's an easier route towards cancer.
Yeah.
It's all sucks. It all sucks.
Yeah.
Don't get
It
me
all
wrong,
sucks.
but for a
Yeah.
reconstruction purpose, radiation makes things really, really challenging.
Yeah. And also, I mean, radiation is never isolated. I mean,
Thank you. And they don't
yes,
talk about that.
they don't talk about that. I mean, it's just not. And
Yeah.
so what other problems are you potentially creating in the body,
Yes.
but we don't talk about this, And so yeah, like that's really scary. When you said that, that was like, because I'm like you, I've had the ultrasounds, I've had the mammograms, and I've gone in specifically for the purpose of, hey, I just want to check the integrity of these implants. I don't have any cancer in my, on either side of my family, so I'm lucky that way. But I'm like, I want to make sure that these are intact, knowing that they can rupture. So it's really made me question, like, your story made me really question my implants and why I want them, or
Mm-hmm.
and really I kind of backtracked. I went back, well, it was easy at the time. Why did I want these implants? Well, it's because I wanted to look good. I was like, in
Yeah.
my early 30s, and I just wanted to look good. I was into fitness too. And so it was part of the package. And so it's it's got me thinking, and I think a lot of women now, I don't know if you've noticed, like, especially on Instagram, there are a lot of women who are taking their implants out,
Yeah.
and they're just getting a lift, and they're speaking about having them removed and feeling kind of like this weight's been lifted, in a sense. So for you now, you have the choice. After your mastectomy, you had a choice of whether you wanted to go ahead and have the reconstruction or not, right? So what
Mm-hmm.
was that? What was your thought process around that, of making that decision?
Oh, that's been a journey. And what I've learned. So, because I had the implants for 30 years and they were
Hmm.
under the muscle, which again, being a movement educator, had I known then what I know now, I probably
Yeah.
wouldn't have gone under the muscle. I think like my pecs have been in stretch for 30
Yes.
years and training them. So, because of that, though, my rib cage are kind of concave. I've
Hmm.
had like the skin. So the thought of going flat really wasn't an option for me because
Right.
of being concave.
Got you.
So implants was really, or I mean, I should say it's an option, but am I going to be okay with the way it looks emotionally?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
So implants were the other option. Now, this whole journey, so I had my double mastectomy February 8th. And when you have a double mastectomy, you cannot do anything. Movement is how I show up in life and all things. I'm sober. It's how I cope. It's how I change my mood. It's everything. And you can't do anything for several weeks.
Wow.
You can't even walk for the first few days because they're just really, you've got drains for 2 weeks, blah, blah, blah. So when it comes time for reconstruction, my plastic surgeon, and this is where I've done a shit ton of research.
Uh-huh.
A lot of plastic surgeons recommend the new or they're not new. They're new to me. I didn't even know they made them. Teardrop implants because it adds some volume, because with the double mastectomy, we've lost everything. So you were talking about explant. A real good friend of mine just had an explant. I've known a few women that have an explant. The difference with explant, like they all still have breast tissue. So you can't even compare. When my friends were like, I just pull your implants out and go on. It's like, you can't compare. This is not enhancement. It's not augmentation. This is reconstruction. I've got zero things to work with. I don't even have nipples now because the tumor is next to the nipple. So as I'm researching how I want to move forward with implants, I know I'm going to go with implants. And when I still had the mindset like, oh, I'm buying new titties, I'm looking at implants through augmentated eyes.
Right.
And it was my nurse who said, Elizabeth, after many weeks, she's like, this is not augmentation. You're having reconstruction. It's not going to look the same. It's not going to be the same. And I really had to grieve that. That was really, really hard because everyone presents it. You're buying new titties. You're getting new titties. Yay. And insurance is paying it. Yay, cancer. You're giving me new titties. That kind of mindset.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the teardrops because that's what's recommended to me, but there's a chance they can rotate in the pocket. Very rare. I bring that up, but it's a huge concern to me because very rare is my jam. If it's very rare, that's the shit that happens to me. Like it just seems and so I don't trust it. And I know my body so well. But again, very rare. It's going to give you some volume here. And what I know, like aesthetically, I don't like the look of teardrop implants. It's like, I got fake tits to look like fake tits. Why do I want to buy natural looking? Saggy, the volume hangs. Anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. Now I know for a fact I do not like teardrop implants. So knew we're going to build them. You've got spacers in during the interim or expanders. Mine didn't need to be filled. Typically you have a double mastectomy. They put expanders in to hold space. They fill them every week to create space for the implants. I didn't need that again because I've had implants so long, I already had space. But I did have expanders in. So you go in for your reconstruction. They take the expanders out. We're going to put the implants in. And again, I loved my boobs for 30 years. My husband, like he said, he's like, for 30 years, I've had these magnificent porn star boobs. Like, it's been, they have been, our sex life is like the strongest part of our relationship. It is a fun, amazing part of our relationship. To instantly have halted and all the emotions that come with it for me and him. And now I've lost this presence, as we were just talking about. So I go into reconstruction. They put in the teardrops. I'm decided I'll try it. And high and tight is my mantra. It's like, okay, we do teardrops, but I want high and tight. I come out, they're high and tight. I like the way they look for that 1 week. And then less than 2 weeks, I take my bra off. I look at my boob, and I even joked about this in classes. Like, I'll probably be the one. I look down teaching, and I'm going to have a horizontal boob. The right implant had already rotated, and I'm not even 2 weeks post-op.
Oh my goodness!
And so I can't even tell you the emotions that I'm going through my head because I'm ready to move forward. Yeah. I was so excited about reconstruction to start having some of my life back, at least physically. And I called Brittany, my nurse friend, and I said, I think it's rotated. There's something up. It looks janky. I came up and I showed Steve that night when I took off the bra, and there's all ripply and it's just shaped weird. And he's like, well, just wait. Maybe it just needs to settle. I'm like, it doesn't settle. It's not going to make it better. I know. Yeah. So anyway, Brittany went the next day, and the OR nurse came in who's been in plastics forever. And she's like, yeah, there's the top. And so she had to manually rotate the implant back to where it's supposed to be. Now, mind you, I have very fresh incisions under my boobs.
Yeah.
And the way I talk about it, I was like, it's like think chicken having its neck wrung, except the chicken is my boob.
Yeah.
It was so painful. And it continued to rotate. So that was May 9th. And now we are what is today? June 15th.
Yeah.
Last Friday, I'm now 4 days post-op. I went in, I had those taken out. I've had rounds put in because I don't want to deal with that. And I don't think that they'll stop rotating. My pockets were big, even though he, fixed the pockets to some degree. So, and with textured implants, I don't know if your viewers, this is important. There's a rare kind of lymphoma that is caused from textured implants, which that was already in my head. Again, super rare, but I do super rare. So I wanted that out of the mix as well.
Yeah, for sure.
You get diagnosed with cancer, it will never not take place up in my bandwidth. It may not take up a lot of space, but it will always be there because they call it canceritis. You're like, oh my gosh, did it spread? So I don't want that piece of textured implants in. So anyway, last Friday I had another surgery to take those out, put rounds in, and my husband and I are keeping very low expectations. We're like, we'll see how they show
you're just day by day right now, right? No, like, or minute by minute even, just kind of no expectations.
Yes. Yeah.
And I guess there's probably a bit of there must be a sense of feeling like, well, I don't want to get my hopes up. I'm not going to, hope that this is going to be the end of it because of your journey up until this point.
Yeah.
So how, I know the emotional side of this is must have been absolutely monumental for you. And what are some of the things that I think for you, you've probably done a lot of work on yourself over the years. Like you've done a lot of emotional and mental work. Cause like I said at the beginning, when I see you, I feel like you're someone who really integrates the physical, emotional, spiritual, mental, like all those bodies. You're so well integrated, but you're very real and you're very vulnerable. And the emotions that come up and allowing those to come up, not labeling them, not judging them, just allowing, how has this, I'm just trying to think how to ask this question, like old, maybe wounding, old traumas, things maybe that you thought you had worked through that came up again for you during this process. Was that present for you during this time?
Isn't that funny? It's like, I'm okay. And then that's one thing you said and I can feel it, and because I know and this is a very sweet thing Steve said last week, but I know my body is a big thing in my relationship with my husband.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how we met. Yeah. It was a physical, chemical, passionate coming together. And he's been very affirming for 31 years in how I look. Mm-hmm. And I know it matters. And I know he loves my boobs. And going through this and losing that piece and like that intimate part of our relationship has changed so abruptly. I can't help, even though we've been together 31 years, like even though he's never done anything to cause me to question our relationship, there's that young girl in me.
Yeah, exactly.
That has relied on the superficial pieces to feel a certain way that has all come up. It's like, will he still find me attractive if I don't have my breasts, if I don't look this way, even though I'm aged with him for 31 years, I don't look like I did at 28. Yeah. But it still brings all that up because he's affirmed that, and it's been so important. And he told me the other day, he came in here and he was so soft and he said, Elizabeth, I've got to acknowledge and I need to tell you that I feel like I have contributed to a part of this journey. And I just want to acknowledge that. And I'm sorry that I have. He said, and I understand that if this take doesn't work, I understand you wanting to move on with your life. I understand you wanting to take them out. And I'm sorry that I know I feel like I've been a part of that, wanting to try to keep creating and building something. And I told him, I said, I'd be lying if that's not true. So, when you've been identified and when you've been affirmed for shallow attributes of yourself, and you begin to age or you begin to change, like it does force you to realize, like, I know I'm not my looks. I know I'm not my body. I know I'm more than my boobs, which people have told me that you're more than your boobs. Like, I know all that.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's still a part of who I am today that I need to grow in and grow through. That does create a little fear. And I like the thought of Steve not looking at me and just desiring me like he always has for 31 years is a scary thought.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like the acceptance piece of being accepted and desired as a woman from your husband, your boyfriend, or even if you're not in a relationship, just by, the masculine, is something that, as someone who has been identified for so long, that sexiness and having it directly attached to your breasts is, like, that's why I asked that, because I would imagine that those wounds and all of that, when you get right down to it, it's the death or grieving the death of that part of yourself that once was, and realizing that she's moving in a different direction now, but there's a grieving of the death of Elizabeth, who was.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful way to say it, because it is grief. And anybody that's had to move through grief realizes that it is not linear and that it is not a one and done. It is a long, ongoing process. And I don't I like the denial part of grief. That's what I've learned through this, through this cancer journey. I like when I'm in denial. It feels good and I can go about my business, and then something will rattle me back to reality. And it's hard. And when you just said attached to my breasts, that's true. It's like, that's so much of who we are as women. I look at this, the political climate right now to me is so crazy, and all the activism around trans. And I look at these young people willingly having their breasts cut off. And there's a part of me that gets so mad, because it's like, I don't want to have mine cut off. Like you don't really understand. Like, you have no idea really how this is going to affect you down the road to do this. Not that it's a knee jerk, but you haven't walked on earth a long time to really understand the ramifications that you're choosing to do of something that so many of us women haven't had a choice around.
And so, I always like to say it's never done. I mean, we're never done. We're never done. Yeah. It's never done. I was talking to a friend the other day, and she was going through something, and, I just said there's always a presentation of something else. There's always an invitation for another layer to be, because I really believe that, we're here to evolve and to grow. And also, I've said this before, that it's not through the good times. We don't get growth through good times. They're amazing, and we want to be happy and have the majority of our time at that place, but that's not where growth comes from. And, how do you feel too? And I don't know if you ever kind of said this to yourself in the past prior to your diagnosis, that, well, everything happens for a reason. There's always a reason behind everything. And did that statement piss you off at all after? I mean, it must have, to a certain degree, if someone ever said that to you, well, everything just happens for a reason.
Oh, girl, I love that you said that, because that's been my new, and I've spoken quite a bit about those cliches and platitudes going through this journey. And one of my new favorite podcasts is Kate Bowler and
the title of her podcast is called Everything. Not everything happens. Not, and and having faith, that's pushed people in the Christian community or of any faith to try to push that everything happens for a reason. It's like, fuck you, excuse me. But
no.
So yes, it pissed me off because what I've learned is the consequence of living is shit happens.
Yeah.
And to what you just said, we grow in death, in pain, in trauma, in these really challenging situations. That's when we're forced to look at things and in ourselves and others and how we're showing up on life. And it kind of rattles us to a new level. So that saying does piss me off. I hate it. I've tried to now be very cognizant and things that I've said in the past, like at least. I try not to say that anymore. Well, at least, at least I'm still living. At least this cancer was a good cancer. It's like, it's still cancer and it will change my life forever and not in ways that I did not welcome. Yeah. But this is where I am today. So I can't stand the platitudes. Yeah. But I do welcome the opportunity to go deeper as a human while I'm walking on earth. And it's made me look at death in a new way and what I value and places I've put energy into that are so petty, a lot around relationship, especially in my marriage, things that I would go to death over because I had to be right or I wanted this so badly. And it harms the relationship. Instead of fighting for the relationship, I'm fighting for this thing over here. And so it's really forced me to look at things like that. And again, where I'm putting energy and time, people, places, things, even social media, like, why am I inviting that shit into my life? I just, I'm now on the back nine. I had this cancer scare. Why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we say these things for ourselves? Everything happens. And I don't know for why or what, but I'm going to look at it as an opportunity to share. So that's why I started posting so I could process and help other people because I couldn't find information that I was looking for out there. And then try to be a better human while I'm still here on earth somehow, whatever that means for me.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I know you have, so many people and for sure, like you've brought awareness, like a massive awareness. So I guess I also kind of just wanted to discuss, for younger girls who might be listening to this, thinking about getting implants and being able to look back, like we had talked about at the beginning, kind of what was the impetus, what was the catalyst to be like, yeah, I'm going to get these implants. And for both of us, I think it was, you're in the industry. It was all about like the physical appearance, but also I would imagine, I'm not sure, but definitely for me, like there was no work at that time. I hadn't done any kind of like emotional healing or, looked at my shit or like any of that stuff, right? It was just like an impulsive thing. I wanted them and I wanted them yesterday. And it was like, when can I get into like, I don't care. I'm ready to go. Like, just get me on a cancellation list. Right.
You're my soul sister. You're my soul sister.
I was like, but now looking back on it, I think, wow, having gone through these years now and doing a ton of therapy and, countless moments in fetal positions and a pile of snot on the floor, like, just hating my parents and then forgiving them and all of it. Right. But it all necessary in the journey. And I just wonder, like, would I have gotten him? It doesn't really matter at this point. I did, but it's just a question where I think, my daughter doesn't have implants and she doesn't want to have implants. But I think to myself, if she did come to me and want them, like what advice would you give a girl who's, just wanting them because she wants to look good. She wants to be sexy for a husband and kind of it stops there.
I've had younger women actually ask me this question, and where I go now is I do think being a certain point in your life, is most valuable to make these decisions. Right. Like, are you going to have children? Because your breasts change so much after you have children.
Yeah.
And I think if your body and health and movement and how you present yourself in life is really important to you, and you do want to look good, and you are older, and the purpose of getting them is bigger than just, why you and I did it.
Yeah.
I think there's value in that. And I don't think it should be discounted.
Yes.
Because I work out. When I started working out, aesthetic was my goal. I killed myself to have a perfect body. Now it's a nice side effect for why I move, because I love being able to move. It's made my recovery unbelievably great. But I'd be lying if I said I'm not vain. I'm vain and lazy, and I still want to look good. But it's finding that line, like, how can I age and look good as I age and not look like that LA look, right?
Right.
So to tell these young women no, and they want to look good, that's not being honest, because I do understand that value, but I do think waiting to a certain point when you're mature enough to understand your why, going through having children, because why waste your money on boobies, pre-babies? If you're going to have babies, some women, may not want to do that. And though the flip of that is they come with a cost. Like, I look at some of these women with smaller breasts and what they could wear and how they can move. It's like, I'll never be able to do a peacock in yoga because I have these fake things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That, for one,
there's a restriction to them to a certain degree.
There's a restriction. Right? They don't smash like breast tissue, and so and wearing little tops. Like, I never felt really great about wearing them because I felt like I looked like hoochie coochie coochie.
Yeah, I was like, you look like you're trying too hard.
Yeah. So, there's a flip side of them. So there's value in having small breasts. I was just watching this show, like Lily Rose Depp, Johnny Depp's daughter.
Yeah.
She has the cutest, perkiest. I was looking at some of these things she's wearing. I was like, she looks great in them, where I look like a, ex-stripper wearing them. So, there's value in having smaller breasts, but I would advise them to wait to really understand their why. And then if they've done their research and research, which is not what I did or you did.
Yeah, totally.
The kinds of implants, there's profile, there's volume, there's round, there's teardrop, like really research your plastic surgeon, research the type of implants. Now I'm on top of the muscle, which, that's, I like that now, knowing what I know in movement, because my muscularity is not going to be affected moving upper body stuff. So I like on top of the muscle. The flip of that is, you don't have any softening to make them look less fake. But hey, I've got fake boobs, so they're going to look fake regardless.
And you're good with it. It's fine.
Exactly.
So how, and just to wrap that piece up too, like, I don't know how you feel. Do you feel that a saline implant would be like safer than a cohesive gel implant, just based on having a rupture like you did?
No, not necessarily. They've come so far with the saline. And, when you have the cohesive gel now, when they cut them in two, they don't go anywhere. And even when people say saline are safer, well, the saline implants are wrapped with a silicone, structure.
Right.
So there's still silicone in your body, granted, but I just don't like the way they present as well. They're very heavy, like water balloons are heavier than gel balloons.
And there's the rippling that happens, so I mean, it's, I guess, 2 to 1, half a dozen to the other, in a sense.
Exactly.
Really, it is. And I just, wanted to say too, it's not like about not getting implants. That's not the point. I think what you said, it's like, do your research, really ask the question, why am I doing this? And if you feel anything kind of like coming up around that, then it might be worth exploring and doing a little bit of internal work before doing it. And one question I want to ask you, because, I'm going on 51 now, and being in the fitness industry, and the whole concept now of aging as women, 50 plus, it's like, it's hard. Like this is one of the things of being in the fitness industry and, going through and being surrounded by, younger versions of my old self, I guess, and not being that and emotionally handling that and like looking in the mirror and seeing the aging happening with the body. Again, this is all external stuff, but it's really easy to say, oh, you're just a beautiful person and, so concentrate on the inside. But you have to remember, if you've always identified with your external self as being like kind of almost the forefront of who you are, you can't just unrealistic to drop that. It's not happening. Mm-hmm. So how do you find yourself moving through the aging process in the fitness industry?
Messy.
Yeah. That's a great word. I love that.
It's messy and it's not easy. And some days it's like I embrace it. So I'm 59 and talk about messing with you that I'm closer to 60 now than 50 is that's a mind fuck. Like that. So some days I embrace it because I look at myself and the way that I can move and the way that I look, I'm like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
And then other days, and then other days I look at myself and I look at my skin just like, and I'm like, oh,
it's happening.
But it is happening. And there's nothing that I can do about it. I do all the little things. Like I love Botox. I do tell all my younger friends, like start Botox in your late 20s. Like it's preventive. I didn't know that, back in the day. But I do love the little things that soften the aging process because I don't want to look haggard.
Little laser here and there.
I'm all about my laser, which I'm overdue.
Can we get a laser in the house, please?
my good friend Nikki, who is my esthetician, like she cleans up stuff. Like I'm not going to stay out of the sun either. That's another. We know the sun is important. For really serotonin, for mental health, and especially growing up in the South, I struggle with not having sun. So I'm going to get the sun. I do wear sunscreen on my face. But it's, you still get sun. So I, once a year, I'm like, okay, Nikki, got to clean up some shit.
Get me in for that IPL. Give me the package. Buy 3, get 1 free.
It's so like,
totally.
It's so true. So, it's such a process. What I do hope though, is I never become so enslaved with aging that I cannot find joy in just being able to be who I am and where I am in the moment. And I know a lot of women, like I never understood Hollywood, women aging and them fighting so hard until you start getting older.
Until it happens.
And that's been a part of how everyone introduces you or talks about you or how you show up. And so then I imagine like a model or actress who they're getting paid, millions and thousands of dollars for that. Like it is a hard thing to reconcile. And I want to be able to do it gracefully. But like I said, it's messy and I struggle. And like right now, my body can move better than most 20 somethings.
Right.
So, I still have that going on.
Yeah,
I can do things, that they can't, but that's not always going to be the case at some point. But I do know the way that I've changed training and moving has helped that. So I don't have a simple answer for you.
I know. I wouldn't either. I mean, I always just like to ask, the question because, I mean, oh my gosh, you're 59 and you look freaking amazing. What you do with your body is amazing. I mean, oh my goodness. And you're right. Like you do more with your body than, probably some 15-year-olds that are, that are just like, it's true. But when it comes to, again, this comes back to the physical appearance and, it all kind of ties in the breast implants, the skin, all of it, and how as women, for men, it's like, yeah, men get sexier, they get gray hair, they get some wrinkles, and they're looking just 1,000 times, but the women, it's like, you get a wrinkle on your face or a sun mark or something, and it's like panic zone because it's like, oh my God, it's happening too, right? The dread you see in the movies where like the girl's looking, she's like pulling up her eyebrows and making faces in the mirror like, oh, and then you start doing that and you're like, wow. But I realized too that, a lot of this is just, the fitness industry can be pretty cruel at times. I think it's gotten better over the years, but just fitting in, coming back to that acceptance piece and really just the self-love piece too. Obviously, it's like kind of a cliche thing to say, but it's true. I don't know if you follow Julie Pyatt. She's Rich Roll's. She is Rich Roll's wife.
Okay,
and
I know who she is.
I belong to her spiritual community. It's called Water Tiger. And she talks a lot about the aging process and everything. And she goes, a long time ago, I just decided, I think she was like 55 or something. And she said, I decided that I'm not aging, I'm eternalizing. I'm eternalizing. And I thought, oh, that's so beautiful, just to, knowing that like, as she's moving forward, there's like this, we do get wiser and we have that element of, being more self-aware and having more insight. And so, aging can be pretty cool too, I guess.
Well, I always call it like, this is a funny story. So I'm no longer, Amazon thing has gone away. I was on an unemployment because of it. My unemployment is going away and I'm trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. Right. Other than just teaching and presenting, because that's such a hustle and there's nothing consistent. And Steve's like, we need some consistent income. So I had an interview with Lululemon. Okay. Now I don't own one piece of Lululemon. I need to say that. I hope they don't watch this. I'll have to go buy some. Anyway. So the first interview and Steve's like, Elizabeth, like, I can't see you doing anything better. It's fitness, it's retail, community outreach, which all those things I love and have done. So anyway, but the interview one gal was a senior in high school. The other, because we do group interview, the other gal was just graduated college. The other one looked like mid-20s. And here I am. And the way that, and it was funny, but the way that I communicate that is like, I've walked on earth longer.
Yeah.
And to your point, like, we'll go back to fitness. If there's a 20-something-year-old trainer trying to educate me around movement, I'm going to be like, Let me know when you've had 4 babies and you've walked and trained your body for 20 more years, then let's chat.
So we'll have a conversation.
We'll have a conversation and I may listen to you. Chances are I won't at all because you haven't walked on earth long enough to really understand what your body goes through with all and morphs and evolves. So there's such value to that I believe we have to offer.
Yeah.
And it's important. And, so many cultures value the aging process of the elders and what they have to offer to their families and to their communities. We Westerners don't.
Yes, so true.
And it's sad. It really makes me sad. And what we were talking about, the way we look, the shallow, blah, blah, blah. So you'll have certain women who are going to fight it tooth and nails. I'm never going to color my hair. I'm never going to Botox. I'm going to change the culture. I look at them like, okay, good luck with that.
Yeah.
If that brings you joy and you feel great with that without being angry, there's always a sense
resentful.
of go for it. But if putting a few highlights in your hair because you're not ready to embrace the gray, like all of that's fine too. TOO. Like it's all okay too. But there is such value in our walking on earth for a certain amount of time, what we learn, being okay with the crepey skin to some degree, because that is part of moving towards our exit, whenever that exit is. And, I don't think we're ever going to change the magazines. We're never going to change the corporate mindset.
So we can start. It's like if you want, they say, if you want to change politics, start on a local level. Get part of your school board, get on your local city council. So we can start here. And hopefully if we could have one young woman like, oh, I was going to get implants tomorrow, but you know what? I think maybe I'll rate and really kind of dissect my why I want to get implants because I really want to do it for Joe. And it's really nothing that I want to do in my body yet. So maybe I wait. That's a
Something
win.
like that. That's a win. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's so true. I don't know what culture, there's one of the cultures says that about women after childbearing years and beyond, it's when a woman really steps into her creativity. And those are the creative years. And those are the years that are magnificent for a woman, so embrace that, try to embrace that. Yeah, for sure. And do the things, it's available, right? Like all of these things are available. And I agree. If it makes you feel better and gives you some confidence and makes you feel good, because on the other side of that, just doing it for the sake of doing it. Well, I'm not going to color my hair anymore. But then you're inside, you've got all this angst and, you're pissed off because your neighbor just dyed her hair and got blonde streaks or whatever. I mean, it's not really worth it, right?
Yeah.
So, that's
so then what's their why? What's their why of not doing it?
Exactly.
It's all this virtue signaling. And I think we women, which grosses me out, but I think we women are the worst. And does that stem back to daddy issues? I don't know, but there's a lot of insecurity that we still carry on late in life. And I would love to see us get better. And I struggle with it. Like I've struggled with envy and jealousy, and I'd love to get us to get better and really loving hard better, our women.
Yeah. And just, I actually really, a lot of my healing work that I did was around like inner child work. And talking about daddy issues, like mommy and daddy issues, right?
Yes,
for sure. And like, I feel like there's so much that can come out of that because it allows you to tap into the why. You have a much more clear insight as to why am I triggered by that? And when you identify those wounds from our childhood that we all carry, we all have them. Nobody's immune, by the way. A lot of people, I don't have anything. No, you do. You just haven't looked for it yet. Right. So true. And so it's like, taking the time to really uncover what those childhood wounds are. It's like, it just really allows for just more understanding and insight into why you do what you do, why things trigger you, and less projection onto others so that, you're not a victim anymore in a sense where it's like, okay, I'm feeling this. I got to sit with it because you got to sit with it anyways. No one's saving you. No one's coming to save you. At the end of the day, it's you. It's always you. So one more thing I just wanted to ask you was about movement, because you are such an advocate for movement. So how did that aspect of movement and play help you in your recovery?
Oh, girl. Like I can now, like if I wasn't bullish before around movement, I am very bullish now. When I already knew a little bit about when chest surgery and double mastectomy and rehab and this and that. So I was really scared, like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to use my arms. It's going to be such a healing process. And then I talked to people who went through it and they're like, I needed a walker to get out of bed. So I'll bring you my walker. You can't use your arms. Somebody let me borrow the recliner so you can sit upright. Makes it easier to get up and up and down. So I did all of that and they were like, move things, waist height on the counter so you're not reaching up to grab anything. And so we did all that and we were so scared, like, oh my gosh, what is this going to be like? Double, mastectomy. And what I found was, because of the way that I have chosen to train and teach my classes, and a couple of them, I created this yoga body lab several years ago, but most recently my movement play class, where I designed it to address stability, mobility, strength, and power. Power is the first attribute we start to lose as we age, but we really need it. Very, very important as we age. And so all angles, all planes of motion, and may look a little bit like yoga, but it's so much more. So you're in a lot of lanes of movement, if you will. And I have the double mastectomy. What I found is like the movement in my shoulder was there. I could get up and down off the floor without using my arms. I could get out of bed without using my arms. And it was such an aha of like, it really matters how we train. And again, I'll go back to the vanity and aesthetics. And this is what I tell my class. When you start training your how and your why very intentionally, like there are biomechanics when we come into movement. Things need to be, the coordination needs to be just so if we want to maximize and optimize movement and efficiency in our body. When we do that well, then the results will come. You'll get that fine ass if you start understanding the function of your glutes and how to really maximize hip extension and power in your glutes. So that piece will come, but now we're addressing how you're going to, God forbid, you get injured. How's the healing process going to be? Or like for me with this surgery, or how about how you want to walk around the block or cook or back out of your car. You know how we look at like something as simple as backing out of your driveway. Everybody's looking at the camera. No one's rotating anymore to move how we were designed to move. Like we're just dumbing it down and dumbing it down. Yeah. So so when people ask how I'm doing physically, I have been doing better than I expected. The mental piece has been really hard. And it just has shown me and affirmed me even more how we train is so important. You don't have to kill and crush yourself. And the result, you'll still get the aesthetics if we understand movement and how to, and with some play. I feel like we all need a little more play in our life. Like most people walk around with oh my gosh, a little tight asshole.
Up a little bit.
Girl, yes, you preach it, sister.
Yeah, totally. That must have felt like, getting the feedback from your care to like the nurses and, can't move, but then seeing yourself actually just do it. There must have been like a real sense of like empowerment in that and feeling of like, wow, like I got this, like I've got this piece of it.
Yes. And so once again, you will not find this kind of information on YouTube from anyone because there aren't a lot of me's out there that are more holistic and fit going through this and wanting to rehab out of it. They listen to what the doctor said. Your oncologist, your surgeon is not trained in biomechanics and movement. So yes, it was empowering, and I go into Dr. Men. I think I'm 2 weeks or not post-op. Now, you've got drains when you have your double mastectomy. There are reasons they want you to be still. You've got expanders in. They don't want you to get infection. I've learned like the infection rate with surgeries like this are very high. I had no idea. I'm so blessed. That hasn't been part of my journey, thankfully. You can't take the drains out until your fluid's down to a certain cc's. And so anytime you move, it keeps your fluids up. But I go into Steve's in the office. And to your point, I was so proud. I'm like, oh my gosh, my mobility is so great. So I'm like, look, Dr. Men, look what I can do in this space. Literally, he stood there like, he's like,
don't do that.
Tell me that. He's like, please tell me that's not what you're doing. And in my world, I was so proud to what you said. Like, look at the mobility that I have in my upper body that 99% of those that have gone through this haven't had, but there's an effect of the healing journey. So there's, trying to find that balance, getting past that little, trouble area. Then like I do, like, so here I am, 5 days, I've got overhead. I'm not trying to move it a lot because I want the implants to settle. But like the extension of my upper back, the spread of my chest, it is empowering. And again, if I wasn't bullish before, I'm more bullish now around the type of movement matters. And so many of these movement classes, you've got teachers in there just parroting, saying do this without really understanding the mechanics of why do this? Like, why do you tell me to do this when I know it's creating shear forces
and my lumbar spine.
Mm-hmm.
But, that's just one of many examples.
So you're not, there's just not a lot of thought that it's just like you said, it's easy to say, well, just do this, do that, like Simon Says kind of.
Yeah.
But no, right? But then there's no explanation as to why you're doing it. But this is amazing too. Again, coming back to the aging process, because look, as we get older, you break your hip when you're elderly, your chances of death is pretty much 100%. Like, might be a bit of an exaggeration, but all of these things like bone density, all of these things matter more than ever as we age. So,
you know what? So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Because this is another part of my story I haven't shared on Instagram yet. My cancer team is a naturopath oncologist. I've got my naturopath. I've got my medical oncologist.
Yeah.
I got my women's health. I've got another GY. Like I've got all these people.
You got your team.
I've had to assemble a team. And so one positive thing with coming with a medical oncologist, because that hasn't been the most positive experience. Like they want you on these hormone blockers.
Yeah.
I'm no longer taking my tamoxifen. The side effects were so brutal. I can't even begin. That's another conversation.
Yeah.
They were brutal, but she wanted me to do a DEXA scan because of this was assuming I'm going to take my hormone blockers, and I tried it for 2 weeks. But anyway, it can, there's a risk of bone density when you're on these hormone blockers. So she did a DEXA scan. Now, going into that DEXA scan, I'm like, I know I'm good. I have loaded my body for all these years. I do all the things. Again, I eat well. I eat full, whole plants. Whole foods, eyes and, nose on my animal protein, this and that. So the DEXA scan came back. I've got osteoporosis in my low back, and the beginning of it in my hip freaked me out. I'm like, why? This is what I've learned. So this is really important for viewers. So I'm meeting with Wendy, my naturopath, and she's like, Lisbeth, let me guess. Was there a point in your maybe 30s and early 40s you over-exercised? And I was like, why would you say that?
Yeah. Me? No.
Yeah. Well, that's a risk factor. So again, no one's talking about that piece of osteoporosis, because then you're overdoing it. So the leaching of your bones, which that was me, all my 30s and my 40s. We've already, kind of discussed that. I was very compulsive, very type A. I went from being a quitter to like, I'm never going to quit.
Yeah, you're like,
and so now here I am at 59. And then I was speaking to another educator friend of mine, and she's like, Dr. Tina, do you follow Dr. Tina on Instagram?
No,
T-Y-N-I. Oh, yes. No, you'll love her.
Oh, you have to share her with me.
Yeah, I will. She's like, Elizabeth, everybody, when you're getting into 50s and 60s, everybody has osteoporosis. And of course, my medical oncologist wanted me to take the drugs for osteoporosis, which is a hard stop. Hell no.
No.
Because again, they have, brutal side effects. So it's an interesting conversation. I already load, and of course I will continue to load. I will continue to do all the things. I have increased more, like I'm taking a different kind of CalMag supplement.
Yep.
What I also learned when I started taking my hormone replacement therapy in my early 50s, at that point, I should have had a DEXA, so we would have had a baseline to see, and that wasn't done. So again, another piece of education, like for you at your age, it might be something to consider where you are now, so that when you progress, you can compare and contrast and keep an eye on your bones. So but the biggest aha was over exercising in our 30s and 40s. There you go, osteoporosis down the road. So again, it's like, this life is a messy, complicated maneuvering system, isn't it? It's like,
but you know what? It's your ability, like you and others who, again, it comes back. It's the experience. You've had the experience. You've done it. You're here talking about it now, and you've got the insight. And so, because I know, so the overtraining is insane.
Yes.
I did an interview with Troy Casey, and we talked about that, and just, he was talking about like doing the HIIT classes and, making a habit of it. And like, you know, it's at the end, it's like the overtraining in that is, I mean, there's going to be consequences. That's the thing. It's like, it might not happen, especially if you're in your 20s and 30s. Like, you're not going to see it, you know, but you will see it. So again, be preventative. And then I also
it's not if, it's when, right? It's not if, it's when.
Yeah. And I also love his take on it too, where, you know, he's always looks at everything holistically, and he's like, you know, if you're doing this and you've got this kind of addictive quality of doing all of this, you know, hit and overtraining all the time, like, what are you running from? You know, what are you running from? And it's questions like that are, you know, they're deep questions to ask, but if you can take the time to answer them, you know, I think there's like a treasure of information in there, you know.
100%. I mean, it always comes back to the why.
Yes.
And
always.
when I was compulsively, like, one of my babies, again, pursuing the insecure, the, you know, having to look a certain way, if we want to go back, you know, again to the mommy daddy issues. My why was I had to look perfect. Like, that was my goal. And I look at myself when I was younger and I had a perfect body.
Yeah.
But I didn't see that. I look back now like, bitch, what was wrong with you, girl? Damn, you looking fine.
Isn't it true? I know, it's crazy. Like, even looking at like the 30-year-old yourself, it's like, what the hell?
No, it's like I would do me if I knew me.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and my husband was a big part of helping that heal as well, you know, affirming, because I didn't believe that. Like, the first time I ever was naked in front of him, I was 28 years old. I started crying. I had all this anxiety because I didn't want him to. And of course, he's like, "What is happening?
Like,
she looks perfect." You know,
did
but
you just again, step out of a magazine? Yeah.
The why, and I had Gabriel, my third son. I went back to teaching way before I was supposed to. I started bleeding horribly in class. I had to leave. Like, it's all that stuff. I know so many women that are in that mentality, that are still in their 40s. They're compulsively overtraining. They don't get enough protein. The protein, we should, like, I weigh 144 pounds, 1 gram per body weight. I should be having 144 grams of protein a day. How many women do you know are minimal getting the protein they need for optimal movement? You know, and perform, and it makes your body look better too.
Yeah.
If we were going to go back to vanity.
Yeah. You know, it's just, it's, again, it comes back to just like looking at ourselves holistically and realizing, I mean, I feel like if we really look at the word and what that means to be holistic, it's like all of the sparks need to be firing in a sense where, you know, we're not just looking after, it's not just the physical. You're not your physical body. You're not how you look. There's, you know, and that is important, but look after your emotional health. Take the time to learn whatever resonates, do inner child work, go to therapy, hit a bag, whatever, but heal those things, you know, and then you can settle in more to kind of your spiritual self and, you know, like get a little bit more deeper, you know. I think as we age too, we're looking for more depth. You know, I think I've heard you say on one of your posts, it's like, I'm interested in relationships with people who like want to talk about deep shit. Like, I don't want to, I see the weather. I don't really care about, it's sunny outside, right? It's like, but you can't have those types of relationships with someone who's doesn't have the ability to go there, or even the wanting to go there. You know, it makes it very difficult to connect.
Absolutely. And it takes a little bit of vulnerability. Like, we've got to be willing to be vulnerable. And so many of us, that's a real uncomfortable space.
Yes.
You know,
again, because we don't want to be judged. We want to be accepted. And so we feel like, well, if I really show up and they really know who I am, they won't like me because they're going to see that I'm not perfect. And like, that's the most important. And you lose relationships like that could be really nurturing because of the inability to be vulnerable. So that vulnerability piece is like so big, and just being like, that's what I love about you, because you're so vulnerable and you're so open, and just realizing like this is all part of the journey and it's my life and it's there, it's happened, and I'm going to talk about it. And
you know, I will tell you, it's still not it's much easier for me now than it was. But I would struggle when I met Steve. He was he was very open. We were very open about how we met. And at that time, I was married, teaching Sunday school, living in the Bible Belt.
Wow.
And the man that I was married at the time, a big business in Chattanooga. So there was a lot of clout, if you will, to my name. And here I have an affair. I'm a big fish in a small pond teaching these classes in Chattanooga. And that's when I got sober. Also, that's when I started going to, because my life was a mess. Yeah. So fast forward, the story of how Steve and I met, and now we've been together 31 years, and it's a miracle we're together because it's taken so much work and it's been hard. But for many, I vowed I would never not share, honestly, the reality of our relationship. Yeah. And for the first many years, I would share, and then I'd have a horrible shame attack.
Oh, I know.
There's so much shame around it.
Yeah.
Because of I was a strong Christian. It was this, it was that, and it was so sordid, and our boys know, we've been honest with our boys, and now I'm at the point where I've understood, I don't know if you've heard of the church Hillsong. That's this huge Hillsong church. I just watched the documentary. And I'm watching it, and Carl Lentz was this huge pastor in the Hillsong, New York. He had a few affairs, and he was fallen from grace. On a much smaller scale, I understand what that feels like.
Yeah, right.
And I also understand what it feels like to be treated. I was dropped like a hot potato by people that can't handle your humanness and your messiness and your pieces that are wounded that you're still coping out of or working out of. And so vulnerability is I still don't like the way it feels, but I have found that I feel like it's so important for us. We need that as people, and not everyone has the courage. I say this almost anytime I'm on a podcast. Not everyone has the courage yet or is brave enough yet to share in such a way. And for some reason I do. God made me very tenacious and strong-willed. I know there's a side effect of it, but so I've vowed that I'm going to plow through life in my best ability doing that in hopes that maybe the young Elizabeth, had I had somebody like me in their life, maybe that would have landed and maybe I would have made different choices. I don't know, but I hate feeling vulnerable, but it's important to be all who
real,
we're to what you just talked about, to be the whole pieces of us.
And I just want to say one last thing on that, because you spoke about that, and what came to mind is, especially in the yoga community, this spiritual bypassing of everything's love, everything's light. There's no room for, just cheer up, you're alive. Just let this is like a problem, and it doesn't allow for people to. It actually creates that shame field around vulnerability, which, it's like I did a Instagram live with someone last year talking about the spiritual bypassing and how it's like, it's big and it really needs to stop because it's preventing vulnerability from happening, because you just feel like if you're not up in the clouds all the time and always happy, then there's something wrong with you. And it's just, it's not realistic. So,
and it's another coping mechanism. It's another strategy.
Yeah.
When I hear all your answers are on the mat, like, what the fuck are you talking about? Really? And I can't tell you how many times I've heard that in a yoga class.
Exactly. And that just made, and I don't mean it's just prevalent in the yoga, because I feel like within the yoga community, there's the spirituality piece and there's the love, self-love. And so it seems to be more of this wanting to bypass all of the other, if it's happy, good. But if you're sad, angry, pissed off, whatever, it's not welcome in the yoga room. And so, just lay down in Shavasana and, repent, or I don't know.
Breathe.
Just breathe. So I just wanted to mention that because you were speaking, it just brought that up for me. But So I have one last question for you, and this is a question I ask all my guests.
Okay.
And so I'm going to ask it to you.
Okay.
And the question is this: what is your authentic life print? What is your unique expression in the world as Elizabeth Andrews?
Ooh, I would say being unapologetically, and I mean that truly, and how I speak and walk into a room, whatever that room is, as an educator, as a presenter at a national conference, as in a Bible study. I come into it unfiltered, and this is who I am.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've had to, seek amends. But that is, I would say, and usually with a little volume, I'll add that. So it's because I know.
Yeah. Which is why you're who you are, and people gravitate to you, and yeah, that's a beautiful, beautiful answer. I love that. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing and being vulnerable. We've covered a lot today. Like I said, I kind of let these interviews kind of organically go, and we kind of went into some different areas, which was amazing. And yeah, thank you so much. I love you. You're just beautiful. And yeah. So where can people find you? If people want to find you, where can they track you down?
One place is Instagram, and I use that more than Facebook, and it's elizabeth.s.andrews. And then here locally, I teach at Bala in Kirkland, and then at True Fusion. I'm not sure what my schedule, because I haven't been teaching for months now. Hopefully and then I will be teaching at Dynamix Fitness. I'm going to be teaching one Sunday a month, and I'm going to do some small group training from there. That's my goal once I get my body back. But locally, you can always reach me if there are ever any questions around anything, movement, cancer, boobies, marriage, being a boy mom,
all of it.
All of it. I'll just try to offer the best I can with where I know I am today and what I know today. That's maybe will change tomorrow, but
okay. Well, I'll link everything. I'll link your Instagram in the show notes so people can get a hold of you if they need.
Girl, you're amazing. I just enjoyed this so much. Had the whole time I'm like, I had no idea she taught step. I've like, we have even more in common.
I know. We're just like, when I heard that, I was like, wow, we have real parallel lives, crazy. Same footprints along the way.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, honey. Well, thank you so much. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.